Okay, but I think I have to address the baby in the room.
I think it's definitely incredible, like the opportunity to be able to spend time with your kids.
What's interesting about all three of us is that we have international investors, which is not necessarily common for Norwegian startups. I think in Norway, sometimes maybe the sales comes a little bit late in the process.
We also actually met our investor at Slush, so it really shows the value of having those physical events where you can connect in person. It's so different.
Yeah, I'm sitting here with my daughter on my lap, I guess.
Yes.
For this session. Thanks for helping entertain her while we have this chat. Our team is kind of like our founding team is three people who have a really strong product background, and I think what's been interesting for us is kind of discovering that we as founders have to be the ones who not just build the product and understand the problem, but also have to focus on distribution. That has definitely been a learning thing for us. Like, you can't really bring somebody in who's going to fix that for you. Like, you have to kind of know how you're going to distribute the product and solve that before kind of handing it off to somebody else.
Yeah.
What's that like been for you guys?
We are definitely having the same experience with sales. We're dealing with waste management and building something that doesn't exist in that segment. So building the product, but also what does that sales journey look like for an industry that's so not digitized? And that's been like the founder's job to do that kind of thinking, and distribution with hardware is also another level of headaches. So I can definitely relate to that for sure.
Yeah, I think the founder-led sales journey is definitely key, and I think especially in Norway, where there's a lot of engineers, a lot of product tech people, sometimes maybe the sales comes a little bit late in the process, which makes us a little bit less competitive than maybe some of our peers, like in the US, where sales comes first. But I definitely think that trend is changing, and people are realizing that earlier than maybe a couple of years ago. Yeah. But it's definitely, I would say, a key area that we have to continue to focus on to be able to grab attention.
Yeah, it's kind of like, for us, it's been super interesting, like not just sales, but also just distribution in general. Like, which channels do you care about? How do you message to your customer? Like, just so many different questions to answer. Yeah. That's not just like, this is what the product does.
Yeah, I'm thinking of sales in general, like including distribution channel, including indirect, direct, inbound, outbound sales and marketing. I think in general, it's so key. And I think in Norway, we haven't been as competitive in that area, but I do see that more and more in terms of hiring and looking for those earlier than I would say before.
How have you solved it?
So, I mean, I think for us, it's been just like, we focus on the experimentation. Like, we are the ones who do kind of first, we've got our first customers in, talk to them about how they think about the problem, how they kind of what relates to them the most in terms of kind of the value that they get out of it instead of just what the product is. Yeah. And then try to message that back out into the universe, learning about which channels that they're in. So we do a lot more like sampling into our population of like, where are you guys? Where do you hear about new tools? Where do you hear about news? Since we are kind of a bottom-up product, most of our customers actually come from YouTube, which is super interesting. Never thought that would be the case, honestly. So it's kind of like just a discovery that comes about once we actually start testing. So I think it's also really easy, I think, to kind of just keep doing what quote works and optimizing at like a local point where we're like, well, this is working pretty well.
I think we were on this like learning journey of how to do value-based sales, because we've also been very like product oriented when selling, and now we're shifting. And I think we have worked very closely with one of the former VPs of Gelato and learned from them. And I think that's like one of the things you see in the Norwegian ecosystem now that has been so immature and small. And now, a couple of years ago, we finally started to get our first unicorns, and that is feeding back into the system. And slowly, we're building out a platform where we can learn from those who have succeeded, which didn't exist in Norway, like when we started out 4 or 5 years ago. So that's
a good point.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like for us also, the other factor is kind of what is it that what outcome are you selling, right? Like, so for us, it's been like, okay, you can make an app. That's cool. how many people care about that outcome versus either being like something bigger than that, right? It's like you can be a non-tech founder.
Yeah.
You can be like what you can be versus what you can create. Like those are two totally different
Yeah.
outcomes that you can actually
Absolutely.
offer somebody. And I think that's also been a big learning for us. Is like
Yeah.
from like the jobs to be done point of view. It's
Yeah.
like, what are you selling? Are you selling kind of a value outcome, or are you selling kind of some other type of outcome as well?
Yeah, we had the exact same journey because we also started selling before building, and
Yeah.
that's why we decided to start the company.
Yeah.
But that was like the very like super early adopters, and now we're trying to like, okay, how can we translate that to something that resonates with
More
the like
broader.
most old school industry there is. So yeah, definitely like they don't care about the features of our technology.
Yeah.
But when we say we can cut 30 to 40% of your costs,
Yeah.
that's when they start like catching interest. So
Yeah, the business value really drives
Yeah,
a lot.
Are there any like other European markets where you feel like this is like they're really crushing this like go-to-market game?
I heard from our investors that one of the benefits of Norway is that the market is so small, so that we're forced to think outside of Norway from the get-go. While if the companies from France or Germany, the markets are already quite big, so they don't think globally from the first day. So I think that could be a positive side, but I do agree that we are still lacking that mindset. I haven't seen any other ecosystem in Europe that can compete with the American way of thinking around those things.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like a leading the witness kind of question.
Two Americans in here on the couch.
Where do you think we can learn from?
No, but I do think that's a good opportunity for, well, you guys have to tell if Norway is the right place to start a company, and I think there are many reasons to why it's difficult. But Norway have a lot of technical expertise, and we have a huge oil industry, and we have a lot of engineers. So it could be a really good match with the more commercial thinking. And I see some companies, they have their tech team in Norway, kind of like a developing country, and then the sales efforts are in the US, which is quite an interesting setup.
I think that like, I mean, you see the trend now where there's a lot of kind of small startups, like that's kind of like becoming like a big thing. It's like small teams growing to kind of big numbers. And that I feel like makes it even more possible to build a company out of Norway where it's like you care about getting extremely good talent, good quality of life, and then you actually can build a team that is so strong on the kind of doing more per person than ever before, which makes it possible to build a small team out of Norway as opposed to like in the US you have access to all this talent, but you don't need to necessarily grow your company to 1,000 employees right away. So that I think provides an incredible opportunity.
What was it for you to start a company in Norway as non-Norwegians?
Didn't think about it too much because I've been living here for so long. I'm a Norwegian dual citizen now, so it's like my co-founders tell me I've just become Norwegian basically at this point. So I haven't thought about it that much anymore. It's pretty nice to build kind of that first team, I would say, in Norway because of the fact that it's such a tight network, and ability to kind of recruit from the people that you know really well is like a very strong point, at least at like the startup phase. And the scale-up phase, I'm sure, will be a bit different for us.
Yeah, I think like administrative-wise, it's super easy to start a company in Norway. Everything is electronic and very fast in that. So I think that part is good. There's a lot of, I would say, support from Innovation Norway to kind of set up and think about your initial idea and kind of maybe seed the money for that. I think, like we said before, I think the market in Norway, it is quite small. So I think there's maybe 1 or 2 degrees of separation from everybody, which has like good positive and negatives. I would say the positive is a very trust-based culture because you're 1 to 2 degrees away from anything. So if you really mess up or you're not a nice person, it'll get around very quickly. It's safe to be able to start a company. And because of that network, it's easier to, I would say, make your first sales and actually test your product to see if you can get paying customers for that. So I think that's really positive. But I think at one point, sometimes I would say the safety culture in Norway also makes it difficult to hire and fire people very quickly, which also makes it very difficult for startups when it's so important at the early stage to get the right people. I think you've been here 12 years, right?
Yeah.
I've been here around 15 years, and I think I've seen the change in Norway, since we first moved. I think when I came in 2009, there were like 3 Mexican restaurants, mucho más, I think. And since then, it's been a lot more diverse, which is really great, and so many more options than there were 15 years ago. And I think that internationalization is really good for Norway. And I think what's interesting about all 3 of us is that we have international investors, which is not necessarily common for Norwegian startups. A lot of Norwegian startups start with just the Norwegian investor base and kind of grow from there, and then maybe go Nordic from there. But love to get your thoughts on how you attracted international investors and why they were interested in your company, and just the growing interest, I think, of international investors coming to Norway. We see this more and more in the media. So love to get your thoughts on that and that change.
Should I just give a huge plug for Oslo Innovation Week? Because
Yeah, perfect.
because one of our investors, Maki, based in Helsinki, we met them at Oslo Innovation Week.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So
didn't know this before.
There you go. Yeah, no, that wasn't yeah, we didn't plant that necessarily, but we met in person at Oslo Innovation Week. I think at the time we started Databutton in 2021, and we were still kind of coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of things were happening over Zoom. So we hadn't actually met too many people in person. So I think that actually helped a lot to kind of actually connect with people in person and have those dialogues.
Yeah.
So that was one of them. I'll plug Kjetil from Sondo,
Yeah.
who is a good friend of mine and one of our early investors, and they have done a really great job of kind of providing a service to Norwegian startups, which is they can and also to VCs abroad, which they connect Norwegian startups with VCs kind of from all over the world, and that's kind of their value prop, and that's been a huge, I think, boost to the ecosystem.
But we also actually met our investor, Brick and Mortar Ventures, at Slush.
Okay.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, just randomly we were sitting and watching pitches, and I started talking to the guy next to me, and it turned out that was one of them. So it really shows the value of having those physical events where you can connect in person. It's so different. We stayed in touch over 1.5 years, and they saw our progress. So yeah, in the beginning I was hesitant to spend too much time on those kind of investor events, but then in hindsight I see how important it has been to build those relationships over time. More and more investors I'm talking to are paying more attention to the Nordics and Norway, especially from a sustainability angle and with the energy transition. And I do think our reputation is growing out there. And for the same reasons that I talked about before, that the market is small, you're forced to think global.
Yeah, I think definitely we have a Belgian VC investing in us, and I definitely think it was more based on the founder and the relationship versus Norway as a country. I think, especially at that time, there wasn't that much known about Norway. They were just kind of looking at the founder. I think now Norway, given unfortunately some of the government actions, it's more of a question that comes up, being how's it going in Norway? That maybe wouldn't have brought up earlier, but hopefully that will change. I think that, like you said, I think around sustainability, I think the Nordics and Norway have a really great opportunity to lead in this area when a lot of the other areas within the US or Europe are going down. It's actually a really great opportunity for Norway to take the lead in this, and I think that people see this as an opportunity. So I think that's really great, and for Norway to just keep pushing in this direction, because there is so much, I think, inherent trust in Norwegians somehow, that people think Norwegians are, really great and trustworthy, and it is a great place to raise children and to have, a nice, well-balanced life. So I think that brand of the Nordics, actually caring, trust-based, caring about kids, really will help with the whole sustainability mindset also and the growth. So I think it's definitely something to propel forward around that.
I think the trust part is quite funny. In one of our recent board meetings, the American investor was like, I love that you're so honest. Just share your struggles. And I was like, what? Am I not supposed to? It was like, well, a lot of people hide it, and then it's difficult for the investors to actually help and solve those challenges.
Yeah, it's like treating them as stakeholders that are outside versus as part of the team.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're in this together now. This has to work.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think I have to address the baby in the room. And that's probably one of the biggest selling points of Norway, the work-life balance and ability to both like establish a family and a company. I would really like to hear your experiences on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely incredible, like the opportunity to be able to spend time with your kids. I think the fact is, like, when you're starting a company, you kind of just are at 150% a little bit more than you are at 50% or 100% leave, which is why I'm here with my daughter. But I think it's also it's important that you know, both partners actually are able to have a career and time and all these things as well. So it's not just that I can spend time with my daughter, it's also that my wife can work and do things that are important to her as well, outside of just being a parent. So I mean, I love it. It's a little bit crazy right now, but it's amazing.
Yeah, I have 3 kids, 7, 10, and 13, and I think it's really great to have kids in Norway. So I'd say for anybody who's thinking of having kids or wanting to understand how it is to live in the Nordics, it's just, you know, the trust mentality and taking care of the kids, and you can see a country how good it is by the way that it treats its children, and that you definitely understand that when you lived in Norway. I'm from the Bay Area, from Silicon Valley, and you know, talking to some of my high school friends that are there, and you know, they're struggling even with their big tech incomes because the daycare is so expensive, a few $1,000s a month per child. Makes it really difficult. For that, I appreciate Norway. You both have the hustle mentality, but you also have the work-life balance that kind of balances out, so you can make these longer strategic decisions. So
we see that in recruiting too. So especially like the top talents, they tend to care more about the holistic life.
Yeah.
So what we actually did in Sensorita is that we implemented the 1 extra day off every month. We have a Sensorita day, which is the final Friday of every month.
Yeah.
Because of that day, that whole week, kind of the efficiency kind of changes, because you know that you don't have the Friday to like catch up on things. In terms of priorities, you're like, okay, what do we have to get done this week? And I think for recruiting and retention as well, it adds up to quite a lot of days in the year. Yeah, that's something we've done, which I think could be really difficult to do in Silicon Valley, for example.